How we doing, guys? So this is the off season. We promise one show a week. We're going to try to deliver. We are playing a bit with the experimentation of different times when it works best for us, when it might work best for you. So if there's a big breaking story, if there's any interesting topics, that's kind of how we want to handle the off season. So that way we talk about some of the major key, points, whether it be USFL or NFL offseason, whether it be, free agent signing, a tag, a coach. But this way we can still give you the headline news without droning on for so long that our shows just become, these terrible blocks of time and just useless. So I was going to introduce the guys, and then I actually had a chance to sit down with Sian Najat of CBS Sports. He did a Q&A live on his Twitter Spaces, and I was able to have like a 15-minute back and forth with him about just the idea of sports and how you account being a sports fan, basically with the emotions, and then how you kind of navigate that. And I don't want to give too much of that away because I'm just going to play the clip for you guys, and it's a bit long, so you guys will understand that in a minute. But I was going to bring in Gov, Donnie, and Evan just to give you guys a quick update on how they were doing, what was going on in their life, and then we'll kind of just go through our different topics throughout the night. How are we doing, guys?
Very good.
Doing good. How you
Are
feeling,
you
Donnie?
ready?
I'm muted. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I
Aha.
only have one topic to bring to the show today. So
Well, like I say, this clip actually went a little long. It was supposed to be just an in and out kind of questionnaire thing, and then he liked what we were kind of promoting and the way we kind of build lineups and kind of construct DFS. He obviously got a unique start and kind of how he covers sports. So like his end was DFS as well, and then got recognized by a bigger platform in CBS. So like he has a unique perspective of like podcast and like digital marketing and that kind of thing. So I do feel like it was a very cool opportunity, and I just want to bring that to you guys now. If you guys are ready, I'll play it. And you guys haven't heard, which is great. I kind of kept it from you guys, so I want some live reactions. If you got them, if not, that's fine too. That's the kind of the idea. But why don't we go ahead here? Maybe. We did test this before the show, and it worked fine.
That's how you know we're live, folks.
Ah, yes.
See, you test things before, and they don't work. So let me, you know what I think I have to do? I think I have to refresh this and then queue it up again. So if you guys could buffer for me, like professionals, that'd be great. But if not,
Oh, you're good.
yeah.
Well,
We'll get
while
through
we're waiting, I had quite myself a delightful, almost uneventful weekend, which is unusual for me.
what happened?
Nothing. That's the point. I haven't had to do anything this weekend, which is unusual for me. Usually, I'm either having to go do jujitsu or at least go visit my brother or something like that. Where it's like, no, nothing this weekend.
Is that good though? Like, there's no football. Like that's actually a good kind of side topic. There is no football, so like people always do this. Like, what are we gonna do? There's still sports on, but also it's kind of nice just to hibernate sometimes and take that deep breath. I just feel like that makes you almost appreciate sports, whether it be NBA or NFL, in a different light as well. I don't mind that. You got to touch some grass once in a while.
I try to.
All right, we should be good now. I actually went too far ahead. These guys are probably thinking this better be good after all this. Close enough. We should be good. Here we go.
Invited you as a speaker and you're off mute already. Oh, you know the drill. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Productive and have a bit of a flow here. But to transition, not too far away, actually, you were talking about progression and being able to, kind of see goals and reimagine things and make things small, see rewards in the goals so that way they're actually attainable. It's like you might want a great career, but you have to make those steps in order to get to that career.
Mm-hmm.
So I notice a lot of what happens in like bigger podcasts or bigger audiences that you might have attracted with like CBS or like the bigger golf platforms you've done, with CBS Golf or like these type of platforms. And then what happens is you gain a following or an audience, and then they romanticize the beautiful parts about what you enjoy about the job as well.
Mhm.
And then what ends up happening, I don't know any better way to put this, but I think you'll know exactly what I mean. It's like the WWE thing where Vince McMahon and the horrible sexual allegations that he's facing. If you're a fan of that sport and you're a wholesome person and you have all these great characteristics about you, and maybe you watch the WWE with your children, or you enjoy it because it used to be a pastime of like, your high school years with your friends or your colleagues or what have you. But now this scandal has kind of like whitewashed your sport or the thing that you found entertaining. So even though you don't like believe in any of those negative allegations, obviously the stain of your sport or your association to that sport is now tainted in some way. And I just wonder, as you got a bigger platform, how would you recommend that you enjoy the best parts about things while still accepting the bad? Because we see in bigger platforms, people will say like, oh, well, you work for X company, so of course you're not going to talk about Stephen A. Smith or the controversy in sports with Pat McAfee because, you don't want to burn bridges. So like, how do you kind of enhance the best parts about sports, or even like a negative thing like gambling can be a very good and healthy community. Like the best people I found play DFS, but gambling kind of has a negative stereotype or stigma. So how do you kind of balance that?
I love this question so much because, so to me, this comes down to compartmentalizing things. And I think sometimes when I say a word like that, I feel like people think, well, if you're compartmentalizing, you're basically just deciding to like not look at the bad stuff.
Exactly.
But that's really not the case, right? I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
If you've watched any of my content, and I'm not talking to you, anybody that's listening, look, the shows I do, you mentioned CBS Sports, the shows I do from CBS Sports at my home studio, you see in the background, you see a picture of Tiger Woods, you see Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I'm looking at this stuff right now, by the way. You look at a Magic Johnson jersey, and wait for it, you get Santana Moss holding up the 21 for Sean Taylor. I am a Commanders fan. I've been a Commanders fan for 30 plus years, through the good and the bad, even though they're a terrible team, kind of a terrible organization in large part over the last 20 years. I still support that team. And people might say, and by the way, when the Dan Snyder allegations were coming out, I don't know, 5 years ago is probably when they started to filter out in terms of like those sexual allegations and the harassment and all of that stuff. I think a lot of people were like, all right, I'm just not rooting for this team anymore, partly because they're bad, but mostly because of Dan Snyder. And my thought is completely different. I can condemn Dan Snyder. I can actively condemn Dan Snyder. I can condemn ownership, and I can absolutely love the players on the field. So, when we have these umbrellas of like, you mentioned ESPN or CBS Sports or the WWE, you're allowed, and I know you know this, but you're like, I think the problem now, especially with social media and a lot of the, like, I don't like to use the word cancel culture because then it puts me in a box. But there is a lot of like, if you say the wrong thing, like you're kind of in trouble. If you represent the wrong group, you're kind of in trouble. Like I'm really not about that. I think we need to be able to speak up. We need to be able to have conversations. And that's part of the problem, I think, politically too, is that socially and politically, is that people are afraid to even bring up a controversial subject because they think before the conversation even starts, they're going to get put in a box and they're going to get shot down. And I absolutely can't stand that, because what happens there, nobody learns anything because the conversation never takes place. So nobody, the ignorant side of the argument, whichever argument that might be, they never get a chance to grow. They never get a chance to learn because they've just been completely boxed out from the jump. So in your example, I'm using the Commanders as sort of an analogy here. I very proudly, even though they're a terrible team so far in the last, again, couple of decades, if not few, I very proudly represent that I like the Commanders. in lieu of and in spite of the Dan Snyder stuff and the ownership stuff and everything that's gone on really with the organization as a result of him over the last 20 years. And if somebody were to challenge me and say, well, how could you support that team? Dan Snyder, did this and did that. It's just such an easy answer for me. I'm not supporting Dan Snyder. You might think I am because maybe I'm buying a ticket to the game, but you do realize that there's other people that are part of this organization that are very good, and I very happily and outwardly support them. I don't have a problem defending that position that I want to root for. Name the player on the field for Washington, or the entire team and coaching staff. So that's my way of it. Like, because the WWE allegations, I mean, that's really no surprise to me. I mean, I don't think Vince McMahon ever kind of like, if there was anybody in the world of sports that some allegations like that would come out, like it's not, he'd be somewhere near the top of the list. But my point in saying that is I'm not a WWE fan, but if I was, I wouldn't hesitate taking my kids to watch the, like, whatever match Monday Night Raw thing is going on, because that, while Vince McMahon is a part of that, he is not the entire thing. If we're looking at a pie chart, Vince McMahon takes up a big piece of that pie, but there's a whole rest of the pie chart, whether you want to qualify that as 80% or 60% or 45%, those people deserve to be supported. So if somebody were to come back at me and say, well, how can you do that? How can you do this? I'll very easily what I'm supporting and who I'm supporting so that they're very clear. I'm not going to just give some like generic response. I'm going to be very clear about what I'm supporting. And if I'm allowed to have that conversation before getting like shut down because I'm taking a position that's not popular, if I'm allowed to have that conversation, then maybe I can impart some wisdom on the person that's asking me the question in the first place. That's the frustration. I want the person that's asking me the question or levying the allegation against me that I'm a bad person for supporting something, I want them to learn from my answer. I want them to actually listen to my answer and maybe change their mind and be like, oh, well, yeah, that's a good point. I still don't support that organization, but I see where you're coming from. And I think the real problem right now is that we're not even allowed to have that type of discourse. I'm not allowed to give that answer back because that person has already decided not to listen to me. And I cannot stand people like that. And people like that need to get called out because none of us are going to get better. None of us are going to learn. None of us are going to be more educated or smarter when the conversation is not allowed to happen. Does that kind of answer your question? Any follow-up there?
No, I know you want to platform as many people as you can, and that's how you generate, genuine conversations and uniqueness. So I know it's as valuable to you as it is to me. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do want to say I was kind of leading the witness because I do know a bit about your history. I know you weren't the biggest WWE fan, and I used to be, but no longer am. But you do work with Jonathan Coachman, so I knew you had to end there. So like that's kind of why I did it, because I knew you understood the world, but you weren't so enamored to have a biased opinion. But I think that's where, like, I should tell you, I'm a peer support specialist. So I deal with a lot of mental and physical, correlated issues between anywhere from like weight loss to suicide prevention.
Wow.
And so, and that we're always teaching, you talked about going to the gym and how it's not just going to the gym, it's creating a habit. It's making that not just a habit, not just like, oh, on Tuesdays I'm going to go to the gym, but actually finding ways to appeal to it and finding connections and ways in. And I think a lot of fathers will do this with their children, with WWE or even like football. You mentioned it. Like, I think it was Mina Kimes of ESPN who said, like, we got kind of off the hook a bit this last year because Deshaun Watson was bad with the Cleveland Browns. Had he been good, that whole scope of that team would have been tainted by and maybe the guy's shouldn't be villainized and he should be given a second chance. But having him be bad, Watson, kind of scapegoats that whole conversation. And then what happens? And situations like that, then people are like, well, I don't want to be controversial, so I'm not even going to entertain this topic because I'm afraid I'll be canceled or I'm afraid I'll be judged, even if they have good intentions behind having that conversation.
Right.
So thank you for touching on it, because I know you have corporate responsibilities, and like this isn't a shot at that even. Like we understand the reasons why, CBS and ESPN is going to have certain guidelines because they have to from a business perspective. But there's also a transparency and an authenticity that I think kind of gets silenced because people are afraid, like, oh, if I say it, even in the best of ways, it's going to be interpreted a different way. And I think we'd be better off having just a better sense of a love language, if you will. Like, it's okay to disagree as long as we're coming at it from a loving perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, you could tell like how passionate I was with my answer because I mean, I don't even know that I want to classify this as a pet peeve or like because it's something larger than that. But I really can't stand people who don't they don't even realize they're doing it, but they don't allow the conversation to happen. They don't allow the education to happen. By the way, can I ask you something real quick? I think
Of
you
course.
led with, and forgive me for not knowing this. Did you lead with you have a podcast as well? If so,
I
what is
do. I have a small podcast. I don't want to feel like I'm selling it out, but
No. That's not what this is about. I first of all, anybody who's willing to come into this forum, I want to know all about them, including some of the
Right.
hobbies or podcasts or whatever they happen to be doing. So I want to hear about it personally.
Fair enough. So my idea was, so I've always liked this idea of taking sports because I'm a disabled individual. So I was never able to play sports, right?
Mhm.
And then people were like, well, you can be involved in sports. You can become like the water boy character, the mascot, the like rah-rah kind of cheerleader, guy on the sidelines. You'll grow up with these same group of kids. You'll be able to participate in this way. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to do this, I want to be the coach. I want to have a role. I want to have responsibilities, have assignments, prove my worth kind of. And so that's what I did. So I really hated this idea that I was like this patron, like good, I hated like when they tried to write local stories about me in the newspapers and they like tried to use my disability to kind of prop it up, even though it was, like you say, for good intentions. Like I just didn't want to be typecasted or stereotyped in that role. And so I've kind of found that like with video games when I was younger, but especially with DFS, you're just a screen name, right? So I could be playing professional athletes. I could be playing, the professional touts, the guy who has $1,000 bankroll, or the guy that has a $5 bankroll. And then I felt like kind of an even fairness kind of platform in it. And then you learn the characteristics and the personalities behind, why you play this player or why you stack in this sport. And you learn like reasons why and what that kind of profitability would do for a person. Because I've always tied my emotions to my sports. That's how I've always done it. And so I'm like, what's missing is the DFS community has a lot of people telling you picks and plays, or you should play this guy, or play, this guy's cheap this week in golf, so play him. He's a 6K guy, But what they don't do is they don't connect with the emotional side of it. Like DFS is a real communal thing. It's a real social thing. It's not this like gambling thing. You're going to lose your house. No one would want that. You could lose your house in a fire. You could lose your house because you made a bunch of bad intimate decisions in your relationships. Like there are plenty of ways to lose your household. And so I'm like, how do I highlight DFS in like a communal way where we're building lineups, we're showing you a process, we're showing you a structure, but I'm doing it with my friends. So honestly, that's why I do this podcast. So I felt like that was missing. The emotional connection into DFS was missing.
One more thing. What's the name of the podcast? And are you actively doing it? Is it still going?
I am. I pin it up on my podcast. So if you visit my Twitter account right now, just click on my name, Wheels Up DFS, Wheels Up Podcast. We do it twice a week is what we're committed to during the season. And then we committed during the off season, we'll do one pod a week. And basically that's what it is. It's kind of a barbershop kind of feel to DFS where we're hanging out, we're having fun. And then at the end of the podcast, we show you our process. So we're showing you that fun entertainment side of it, the emotional side. And then we're putting that kind of logical brain or that rationale into a lineup.
I absolutely love that. I think that's a really clever idea too. And I can't say that I know anybody that's doing that in terms of like kind of the themes you're working with. I think that's great, and I want to listen to it. So I'm definitely gonna dial in at some point and check that out for sure.
Again, just follow up on my Twitter. It's always my first. The first pen tweet you see will be the latest episode. So
awesome. I absolutely love it. All right, man. Well, first of all, that was such a good question. I mean, it almost seems staged because I think about this subject so much, and so like I have I didn't have the analogy ready, but I certainly had the answer ready. And that's something I'm just really passionate about. So you just kind of activated something in my brain that I haven't talked about in a little bit. But
so talk about passion. I know it was long. It might have been Evan's longest podcast he's ever listened to. So I do appreciate you guys sticking with me there. There was a lot there, but I thought we represented pretty well what we're about. And just this organic nature of you can enjoy something. It can start out very small. It can take on a lot of different forms. And it can be a combination of all those things. And yes, I was talking faster. I hate the sound of my voice. But he had a whole group of people on, and I didn't want to take up too much of his time, as you heard there. Did you have any kind of follow-up? Because I thought the conversation we had was very important, and I think it goes underappreciated just in sports. And I didn't honestly think he would have that genuine of a response, but he really did. So I had to bring it to this platform. If you guys have any follow-up, if not, we can just move on to whatever topic you have tonight. But I just thought it was an interesting dialogue that I want to make sure that our audience saw.
Yeah, for me, that's just, that's really cool of him to be doing. And, I think you represented it well. And I enjoyed it. It's a good question, like you said. Not something I'm quite invested in right now, but I like it.
Well, no, that's the thing too, Donnie. Is he does DFS, like that's his big platform, right? CBS Sports Guy does DFS, just their DFS golf coverage and their DFS NFL coverage, but also has an end with mental health and kind of this idea of motivating and exercise. And his wife's a teacher, so he has all these other interest outside of sports, and I just felt like that was a good bridge to kind of what we do. We're really just hanging out just at the end of it, or during, we hope that you learn something at the end of this podcast, but we try to filter as much entertainment and as possible to make it worth your while.
If you learn something, great. I'm just here to talk fucking sports and build lineups with you guys, honestly. Like, I was going to be doing this anyway, and like Logan talked about, like, I was going to be in our community. I'd be in RTR talking with Double J and everyone. If we weren't doing the podcast right now, I would be in the voice chat talking NBA with them because it locks in 10 minutes. By the way, Jordan Clarkson or Trey Mann from Charlotte? Who you like better?
Clarkson.
Really?
Trey Mann. Do you know who either one of those guys are? Is the better question.
I know who Kelly Clarkson is. I play Kelly all the time.
Is my mic better?
That's like a nickname I got for the guy ever since he's played in LA. It's Kelly. Jordan Clarkson is Kelly Clarkson. All right.
Much better, Donnie.
Okay.
It is better, yes.
So Logan, I will say this before we move to the next topic. I'm actually glad that you brought up that particular. I don't want to call it a loaded question, but at the very least, it was a deeper, more philosophical, ethical, and just more moral side of the not necessarily just sports gambling, but just keeping it more of a general thing that also applies to this community as well. Because most guys are not going to come in to care about that sort of stuff. They just want answers to suit their own needs and then move on, right? So it's good to actually engage with somebody like Sia, who gave a great answer, by the way, to everything that you brought up, including Vince McMahon, which was, I'll save what I think about Vince McMahon for another time. But yeah, I mean, I admittedly I hadn't heard Sia's show before. I don't have SiriusXM, but he's got me as a follower on Twitter. So you got another follower there, Sia, if you're listening.
He also platforms on YouTube a lot, especially for his DFS content. So he doesn't give a lot of free content away. Obviously, this podcast is a Q&A that he literally opens up to his Twitter space every other week on Tuesdays, I believe this was, and just lets you ask him questions. Like he's kind of what happens a lot with me, where you get typecasted, you're the sports guy in the family in your in your group, and then so his big thing is trying to branch out and show people different personality types. And I just thought, we do that a lot with DFS. I feel like too. It's games start at 7 o'clock, or they start at 1 o'clock on Sunday, but there's so much that goes into it. There's injury reports, there's late breaking news, and then like there's been times where I've literally called Donnie up in the morning and like interrupted his breakfast and been like, "Hey, you know what? You got to get this guy." Like
More like my sleep.
yeah, all those little things matter though. Like that tells you that I care about you. I remember a couple of years ago, you saved my DFS lineup for the Super Bowl. I'll never forget that. Like it might sound silly, but those are like
I don't remember it.
I think it was the Eagles and Chiefs Super Bowl from what was that, a year and a half ago? I forget who it was. I think I was playing a backup tight end, and he was inactive, and you told me to get him out, and so I'll never forget it, even though Donnie has. So like that's the kind of fun of it. And Gov, you undersold it. Like trust me, your link is in the description. You have a great Twitter, following yourself. You are always plugged into the DFS communities, like you say. And that's why I wanted to bring you on. I don't think this podcast would even exist had you not been willing to come on with me in the early days, way before Donnie or Evan was even here, because I really do value your DFS process.
Oh, I appreciate that, Logan. And honestly, I kind of wanted a place to talk about it that could get out. And our early stuff was a lot of my theory and process and bankroll management, hammering that home, stuff like that. It was a lot of the early stuff that I was thinking about in DFS. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of evolved into what my game is now. It's okay, I understand how I'm going to play, which helps me understand how I'm going to build my lineups, which then gives me the plays that I really love to play.
Logan, the other thing I'll mention too about keeping it on a more personal level with Sia is that I've heard from other fantasy analysts before who have personal accounts on places like Instagram. They'll do something like maybe post a picture of a family outing on a Saturday or Sunday that has nothing to do with the game. Yeah. And they'll still get comments that'll be like, "Oh, Barkley or CMC?" And it's like, guys, I'm not a free advice jukebox here. Come on, let's at least not treat us like we're just this one pigeonholed category that you're only allowed to talk to me about. I'm a human being too.
Which is honestly what I enjoy. Most of the DFS podcasts I listen to are an hour long, right? And 40 minutes might be DFS content. But what really makes them stand out is all that stuff in between that makes you care about the person. It's not just that they're playing, Colin Morikawa for golf to finish in the top 5. It's once Colin does finish in the top 5 in golf, if he does that week, you're like, hey, that DFS tout, he changed his family's life. And some of his personal, he has a kid, this is going on. Or, I knew that Sia, for example, was a Commanders fan. I knew that. So I was leading the witness a bit when I asked him that question, because I knew he'd have a good end, because he had this allegation scandal tied to his fandom. Donnie's dealt with it with the Patriots, having this Bill Belichick cloud of, okay, how much of Spygate was a violation and how much of that do you have to own as a blackballed fan, almost how much of it is legit.
I'll say this. Spygate's 100% real. That's we definitely did that.
Yeah. But that's the thing is
but the Deflategate's fake.
Yeah, I appreciate that about you, but there are some fans that just won't acknowledge that at all.
Deflategate's fake, I just said
it. Exactly. Well, it's because, Donnie, to your point though, some people are going to attack the Patriots because they were jealous of Tom Brady, or they didn't like how you guys had so much success,
So speaking of Juno, could the four of us pull off a whole barbershop quartet? Get the full suits and try to sing something?
No. No. See, listen, Gov. But
Sorry,
now,
what I miss. I'll legit tell you guys.
we're talking
like-
about the barbershop quartet. Do you think we can pull it off? There you go.
Maybe.
I've only
After I eat
You know?
pizza.
Wait, what? Is that for Mellow
That's
Mushroom?
literally what I did. No,
Is
it's
that-
not Mellow Mushroom. I was just working at Mellow Mushroom. That's
I was
this-
gonna
this is
say
from a
because I
different
wouldn't be able
place.
to do that.
no, I've already told my dad if they want me to when I'm working a Sunday morning, just text me. I will bring home pizza for the dinner that night. It's no problem. I bring home food all the time. I was literally sitting here a couple of shows ago with a fucking calzone, waiting for the show to end so I could goddamn eat. Not caring tonight. Food now.
So you're saying if that
I ate when the thing was going on.
Yeah, if that-
I might be eating right now.
you might be now. If that live show happens in Florida and say a year's time, you're saying you cater the whole thing.
When the fuck did I agree to do that? Holy shit. No. Hold maybe. I mean, I probably would, but hold on. Hold.
Depends on how much he smokes.
Well, what's crazier?
Well, no, it depends on how much I actually need to bring. If I can actually shit, like goddamn.
Hey,
Have
hey,
I hit a big thing? Sure. Let me just bake a tournament real quick, and then I'll cover it. We're
I
good.
thought that was a lot more realistic than Evan's wish that we'd all sing together. I thought
Well, it
this
was
was
more so
gonna be-
Juno's wish. He was just clarifying.
Ugh.
Seriously though, these
See,
are
that's the
the
thing.
kind of
I can't sing. My brother and sister got all the singing talent. My sister was opera
Well-
singer. My brother was great in chorus until
So you
The
just have the
tracheotomy and that.
untapped potential. You're just a late bloomer.
no, I'm the math guy. They got all the artistic talent, and math is really easy for me. Like stupid easy. Like, why do you guys need calculators? This is the stupidest, the easiest thing in the world. Kind of like easy. Like so,
I like
like
that we haven't
that's the
talked
thing. I got all the
ideas.
math and science, which is why I'm playing DFS and running projections and looking at the math and shit. It's like I have no problem running the standard deviation. I completely understand all the statistics behind it and everything going towards it. It's like, okay, cool, I got this. Easy.
I'm glad you brought it full circle though, because that was the kind of Evan's point. Honestly, though, when you were gone, and he was saying like we were talking about podcasts and like their influence, and I'm telling him that like most of the podcasts I listen to, whether it be the PME or these type of different shows, which obviously Sia has a relationship with Pat Mayo as well. 40% of the podcast might be about DFS lineups, but it's the other 20 minutes of just friendship and banter and learning these people's personalities. That's what makes you cheer for their lineups to do well. That's what makes you feel connected at the end of a Sunday when we're like, hey, did we win in Rainmakers? So we might not be the big enough podcast yet where you guys care, but that's the idea between these pillars. Really, when I say pillars, I'm asking these guys like, oh, do you have any pillars this week? Really, what I'm saying is, what are your thoughts on this week? I just use a fun kind of end to get you guys to kind of meld together ideas. That's the idea of the whole thing.
Well, I do have a quick exercise. Well, before any big signings happen or any huge rumors come
Go ahead.
out, do we? I kind of want to go down the list for everyone. What's like the dream signing, draft pick, maybe trade or something that happens for you guys in each one of your rosters? Do you guys have a player you want to come in free agency or anything?
I'm not particularly picky about free agency for the Bears, A, because we have a lot of cap space again. B, I know Ryan Poles is currently working his magic trying to either trade the first overall pick, the ninth overall pick, or both.
You can get into that as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I don't have a 100% idea on what they're trying to do right now. They're still trying to figure all that out, and there are all kinds of possibilities we could be doing. So I wouldn't say I have like a firm number one thing or player to get as a result of that.
Yeah, so you don't. I personally am not deciding on what to do with Fields as the number one overall pick or anything like that. But as a Bears fan, I think you're in a very interesting spot. You are probably in the most stressful spot of all the fan bases right now because your franchise is on the verge of changing drastically.
Yes, and we have a lot of noise to tune out too because it's probably one of the top NFL stories right now that's creating controversy: Caleb Williams or Justin Fields, and I hate the noise.
What if not? that's the point, though. Evan, what if you just hate the noise? And the honest truth is, both are good options. Like, is that possible as a fan? Because that's how I think a lot of times. But sometimes I just think I might be a sports alien when it comes to this. Like, there is a universe, in my opinion, where Fields could be the Bears quarterback this season and they succeed. And there's also a universe parallel where you get Caleb Williams and you have the future for the next 10 years. But he could also bust, out 1 year like Young did as well. Like, I see, to bring back to Gus' team, I think people are giving up way too early on Bryce Young, too. So I kind of see it from both
I
perspectives.
just want us to get a wide receiver this year, honestly. Like I and not in the draft. Like I need a veteran. I like the Adam Thielen idea. Do it better. Like we should have been the one with fucking DeAndre Hopkins. I don't care how much money we had to throw at him. Like that's what we need to do. So like,
Okay.
if
See,
I
I
don't start the season with one of Mike Evans, T. Higgins, or Michael Pittman on my team, I'm not going to be happy.
T. Higgins is getting tagged.
Which is dumb, because then they have no money to pay Jamar next year.
No, this is tagged for 1 season.
Yeah.
So you tag him now, trade him this
which
year.
means you then next year have to pay both. You
They
can
just
only
won't pay
tag
T.
one, and if you tag Higgins, it'll be with like a 10 for 15% increase
Yeah.
guaranteed.
I think they trade Higgins or just don't resign him next year.
I think that you just let him go. You don't tag him. Why pay? Like at that point, you need the money to re-sign Jamar early. Just let him go and then give Jamar his contract
and
draft another wide receiver or something. You already have to let go of Tyler Boyd. Like you really need to get that settled.
If the Bengals just let
next year.
If the Bengals just let T. Higgins walk in free agency, that would be an absolute tragedy for that team because he's too good to let walk.
I agree, but I think money-wise, I think you just sort of
Well, what would the comp pick be? Because the comp, if you get a third-round pick on a comp, that's not enough for me to get rid of T.
The third.
I agree.
Right. That's not enough for me. I'd rather have him for one more year, give it one last ride, and try to win the Super Bowl.
But I'm kind of with Gov here. But
I mean, if that's your thought, then that's what you do. Honestly,
there's nothing wrong with
rookie
giving
deals
it one
are coming
last.
up. Like you're gonna need to give Jamar and you
I
already
think
gave
Logan
Burrow.
Wilson's contract's coming
You're
up
gonna
as
need
well.
to give Jamar the money.
Yeah, and they drafted Jamar specifically for Joe Burrow, so that would be stupid if they let him walk too.
If you have to choose one, then you need to choose.
It has to be Jamar, yeah.
But they kind of knew this last year, and they didn't move T. Higgins once Burrow was hurt. Like I thought he was definitely going to be moved by the trade deadline with Burrow hurt. But no, they did nothing.
They did miss their opportunity to trade him. For sure, they missed their opportunity.
And I'm with you more, Gov, where it's like, hey, you want to lock up your superstar guy, even if you think Higgins is a star. Like you want to make sure you have enough for that superstar, that difference maker, and that's what I think Chase is. But I think they did it because Joe Burrow, he hated the idea that the Super Bowl window for the Bengals might not be at the premium. So
it's not a door anymore. It's definitely gone down to a window for sure.
Well, but that's the thing is he thinks it's he thinks it's wide open. So I think they're like, you know what, we'll just pay this 1 year tax.
I think if Burrow can stay healthy, it is wide open, honestly. But that offense needs to stay good. So you need to be ready to replace Higgins. So I expect them to draft multiple wide receivers this year anyway. If you're not drafting wide receivers, you need to be drafting offensive linemen. If I'm Cincinnati.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I draft on offense this year. I'm not I can find the guys to replace Mixon, or Mixon will be healthy. I'm not drafting a running back. Not going and getting a tight end. I'm getting an offensive lineman, or I'm getting wide receivers this year. Or I'm playing it, or I'm putting it all on the defense.
Logan, what do you need as a Lions fan?
It looks like I'm placating because the Lions finally had a successful season. But Donnie can back me up on this. I've always said the draft.
What he needs is a diss track from Eminem, and boom, they kill the whole season.
That's right.
First thing. That's all he needs. He needs a good diss track from Eminem to start the year, and boom, they're 12 and before you know it, they're 12-3.
Honestly, I've always been a fan of taking the best available, and maybe that's why because I've been known to inflate Brad Holmes. I've literally called him the best modern general manager of all time. Look at what he did with the Rams. And then with the Lions, I don't think the guy's missed. He can even take positions that most people hate. and a running back and be like, you can call him a running back, whatever you want. He's a weapon for me, and I'm going to make it work. And that worked out. So, but one thing he does that's very smart, and I've always thought was a very underrated thing that a lot of good general managers do. It's not the Bill Belichick thing that you always trade down. He says that the draft is very stressful because he's always on the clock. He's like, when people think of you on the clock, they think of like when your picks up. But he's like, my style of being a drafter is always being open to possibilities. So I don't know if it's true or not because I'm just a fan, but and his idea is he's always the idea is he can always change his mind up until that pick is actually in. So he really sells that. So like he claims
you don't want to target a guy like Gilmore.
Well, but that's the thing, Don, is he's telling us he's not targeting anyone. He claims that they build the board at the last minute every year. Because
no, I mean with free agency. I'm like you're just looking only draft, you don't care about free agency. You're gonna have to
we have like the 8th highest salary cap. So
right. So are you gonna try just like overpay a guy like Gilmore? Do you want to do that? Just a 1-year deal?
He's never done that. I do think there's a chance that we go after Howard because
Howard, another name I forgot about.
Yeah, Howard had some crossover, I think, with Dan Campbell when Campbell took over for Philman. So there is that familiarity, I believe, there. But I could be wrong. That could work.
Man, if Xavier Howard goes to the Lions, I will not be happy.
That's a good
move
one
right there.
That's a good one right there.
That's why I would hate it, because it's a good move.
If you can keep C.J. Gardner-Johnson too, man, that defense.
I don't want Gardner-Johnson.
You don't want him again? I think his money's going to go down so much after his season this past year. Like he's not going to get paid what he thought he was going to get paid now.
He's valuable, but not the way we like to use our safeties. I think he's a lot more valuable with like a zone heavy team. And last year, at least, we were a lot more man happy. So
yeah, that's why I like a guy like Gilmore over in
But I would say like a lot of people have slotted in the corner from Alabama, McKinney, who I love, who I think has like the ball hawking abilities, but like I've never tried to be a smarter general manager than you or an actual professional general manager, but I will judge you harshly if you're supposed to be a professional at this job and you fail at it consistently. And so my point is Brett Holmes has never failed, in my opinion. So if he wants to take a running back in the first round, I'm okay with it. Honestly, if he wanted to take a kick returner in the first round, tried to tell me he was Devin Hester, I'd be like, I'm not going to argue with you. Go ahead.
For me, I need, and I mean this, we need after June 1st is when we're going to do it if we do it. Get Parker or Juju, hopefully both those contracts off the book. You can save a little money. And I don't even care. Just get them off the roster.
Please. Like, I want that for you too, Johnny.
I would trade Juju in a 5th-round pick for a 7th-round pick in a heartbeat on June 1st.
I have the bias. I want nothing good for the Patriots, but I agree that needs to be done.
I don't. But how, does anyone even trade that? I don't know if anyone would take Juju in a 5th for a 7th.
Oh no, Juju, you got to find a witch to like just magically get that away off the contracts. Like
his
I don't know how
knee's
that's
gonna
going
explode.
Parker, maybe. Juju, you got to find some mystical sorcerer to do some shit with that.
Parker, I think we can bamboozle Kansas City possibly.
Yeah, at least sell them for a bag of chips to them if you have to.
No. It'll be the Chargers.
I don't care who it is.
They have their wide receiver core is so.
But I do think
like,
Parker would be.
Parker could totally be right there with Palmer and whoever else they're rolling out when Big Mike and Keenan Allen get hurt.
Now,
Parker's better than MVS. So
if we want to go totally rumor monitoring, though, we can go to the Chargers. Have strong ties to Jim Harbaugh with Saquon Barkley. Apparently, Jim would love to just run Barkley's wheels right off.
Barkley instead of Eckler, that'd be insane on that team. That would make the Chargers a legit fucking
Eckler,
real team.
I think Eckler's pretty much done.
No, that's what I mean. Like if you were to replace Eckler with Barkley, now you have a legit, not old and probably done running back. that can do all the passing game work, holy shit.
Yeah,
From
well,
my
they need
from
to
my-
rehaul that running back room.
From my 2023 NFL bingo card, I was not expecting Eckler's downfall to be on it.
No, we were so we weren't high on him, but we definitely weren't low on him. We thought it would have to be an injury. We did not think he'd be unplayable in the end of the season.
No, he'll have his spike weeks, but
Yeah.
he's not playing the whole year. That was the thought.
Yeah, but we did think if he's on the field for let's say 60% of the games, he will have an impact on fantasy.
Yep.
That's how we felt. And boy, were we wrong.
Yeah, not this year. He fell off that cliff.
Hey, we didn't put any. I don't know if you did, Gov, but we didn't put any stock into him at all this year. I don't think.
I had no Eckler in any of my best ball teams. I didn't draft him any of my season long. Well, okay, no. I had one best ball team that was a full on Charger. So I had Eckler, Keenan, Herbert.
So you really just sucked.
I had one best ball team that was honestly, that was one of my better teams because the two quarterbacks I took were Herbert and Stroud. So that team that had Big Mike and Keenan and Eckler also late took Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz and shit like that. So I was fine. That team was like one of the ones I was sweating to get in. I needed like Devontae Parker or not Devonta Smith to get like 20 points in like week 15 for that team to advance. He only got 17. Fuck it. or maybe it was like 15 and he only got 11. Something like that. I only lost by like 4 points.
That sucks.
From that Herbert team. But like it was a Herbert, Eckler, Allen triple stack at least. I think it had either Palmer or Everett with it. And then the other quarterback on the thing was Stroud with I got Dell and Schultz late to go.
Well, we're on the topic of running backs, I guess. Do you think Nick Chubb comes back and is fine? Maybe not fine, but still.
If he is ready and willing, I 100% think he comes back.
If he fell to the 4th round in the draft, would you pick him?
Oh God,
absolutely.
Okay.
There's a chance I still take him round 2 or 3, easy.
Okay. See, that's
like I don't see like based off of Cleveland and what I've seen any running back do in that offense. If he comes back, I still keep him a top 10 running back no matter what.
We're talking Nick Chubb, Logan.
Like now, is he 2 or 3 on my list behind McCaffrey and whatever? Probably not. But is he still a top 10 running back in Cleveland? Yes. 100%. He's still a 2nd or 3rd round running back in my mind.
The emergence of a good Ford season.
Yeah, we've seen what other running backs can do. We know their game plan is going to be to run, and we know their offensive line is built to run. So if I draft almost any running back, I would definitely take Nick Chubb, even coming off a knee reconstruction, even coming off an injury, whatever he had.
It was a bad injury.
Yeah. The exact same one as he had in college.
Exact same knee, too? Yeah. So, like, he knows what he's doing. So, if he's willing to come back from it, I'm ready to let him go.
I think Nick Chubb has one more good season in him before we start to see a decline. But with all the rest that he's got, I think he's got another good one in him. And as of 3 days ago, the Athletics' Zach Jackson points out that Nick Chubb's contract was structured long before his injury, and there's rumors flying that Chubb could be either a salary cap casualty or they will work out a restructured deal with him. So that's something to watch.
That'll probably be that'll be the thing. If they work out a restructured deal, they know the knee looks good, he feels good, and they're going to try to get his last couple years out of him. If they don't, then even if he tries to be on a team, they know that like he's trying to come back and he's not going to be the same dude, even if he does come back.
Yeah, because if you think Nick Chubb's going to be 75% of what he was, you keep him.
Yeah, but if you don't think he's going to be at least 75% of what he was, then he's not going to be good for you anymore.
That's why I think... Sorry, go ahead, Logan.
No, I'm saying even if you keep him at that point, you're just restructuring. Like it's okay because I feel like even as a sports fan, like people will say, well, with DFS or with gambling or now that gambling is legal in Michigan, like you've changed as a sports fan. I'm like, yeah, I have. Everyone changes. Like sports fans, coaches, college sports, the transfer portals change. Like the way we attack college sports, the way college coaches are looked at. Eric Berminami with UCLA now. We
Yeah,
have
that's what I wanted to talk about earlier too.
yeah, Chip Kelly's coming back to the NFL because he doesn't want to deal with college. Like you got Jim Harbaugh. Like I think at this point, it's almost this empowerment movement, but it's not just the players. And I feel like DFS has allowed me to be a better, honest sports fan more than ever before. Because people were like, well, are you that big of a Lions fan now that you follow, DFS? I'm like, no, I'm probably not. Like, if I'm being honest. But I follow the injury reports more. So when I see Nick Chubb go down with an injury, that does affect me more. Yes, it does affect some of my bets. And, you can gasp out loud if you have an Aaron Rodgers bet and he goes down in the first quarter. And you can fist pump even if like you had an I'm not saying like you got to withhold these emotional reactions in the immediacy and have them the rest of the season. But
Kelly took
but
a
we
job
can't
with Ohio State, by the way.
say what that.
Chip Kelly took a job with Ohio State.
Did-
I don't
Nice.
know what he's doing.
I know he talked about going to the NFL. He was debating going back to college.
He interviewed in Seattle.
Right.
Logan, can I say one more thing about Nick Chubb?
No, go ahead.
He was before that gruesome injury. He killed the Bengals and he was killing the Steelers on the ground. He was averaging 6 yards per carry before that injury, and throughout, I don't think that was going to be sustainable. But he's finished every season he's played over 5 yards per carry on the ground and double-digit touchdowns for just 2 of those seasons. So that's why I don't think Nick Chubb's last season is upon us. I think he's at least got one more good year in him, assuming that the recovery goes well. So there will be a lot of people in like DFS and even vanilla fantasy football leagues that will sleep on Chubb. I think he's going to have great value.
And even in your realm, Evan, like I feel like, see, this is where I feel like gambling and like DFS or just like fantasy sports gets a bad rap. It's like you guys are always into it and like you don't care about real football anymore. But guess what? We also care about the long-term valuability of players way more than most sports fans do. Like Nick Chubb's injury, like the amount of effort you have to put in to find the small edges in DFS allow you to find out injury reports, and we're following like actual doctors and you're following weather reports and different connections that way. That like maybe we care more than the average sports fan. And so when emotional things happen like a career-ending injury or a season-long injury, it matters more to us. Someone said, well, like, do you think you'd be a sports fan? I'm like, I'm a different sports fan now that I have DFS in my life. But I've met, I have deeper connections with sports people. Like, we do this podcast because of DFS. But, like, when major things happen, guess where I go first? I go to our Discord channel. We're talking about all the stuff that happens, whether that's whether we're celebrating a Watson interception because we don't like what he's done off the field, or worse, sad because somebody got hurt. Like, honestly, it makes me a better person, I feel like.
So, Logan, that kind of reminds me of a rant that Matthew Berry had on the ESPN Fantasy Focus show 4.5 years ago. He was responding in a rant to the Arizona Cardinals writing some really rude tweets at the fantasy community. And in the middle of that rant, he was saying stuff like, who cares about Trent Sherfield and Keyshawn Johnson, the other Keyshawn Johnson? You guys are rolling Pharoh Cooper out there. And you know who knows that? Fantasy players, not actual fans, because it's brutal. So that kind of goes along with the point that, yes, we are paying attention to real football and how they're applied on the team. Whereas a lot of people may think, oh, we're just a bunch of Madden and fantasy players. We don't know what we're talking about. But there's a lot more to it than that. And those people do exist too. But I like to hope that we're not for people that fall under that realm.
Well, I do, when we're on cash casualties and all that, big ones like David Bakhtiari, if he gets cut, which I would be very shocked if he doesn't, where they say $21 million, J.C. Jackson probably will be a Patriots cap casualty, giving them $14 million. Aaron Jones, I don't think would get cut, but he's a big amount of money. There's a lot of big names. Taysom Hill, who a lot of people would love. There's a lot that could happen.
If the 49ers do not give a lot of money to one of these cap casualties at the offensive line and get a veteran for a veteran-laden team and Christian McCaffrey, because that's the thing, is like when you have the opportunity and the money to scoop up some of this value off of a cap casualty, you want it to promote the skill set of the guys already on your team. So it wouldn't be the same as if like a David went to with like the Lions, because we already have a good offensive line. But if he goes somewhere where you can already help a veteran superstar like McCaffrey, when you already have like Williams who's aging, those are the type of moves that like I don't feel like get enough attention for what they do for the locker room, for the morale. Because think about if you're a team that's almost close to a playoff run or almost close to a Super Bowl run, and you don't go after that veteran that makes a difference, that sends a whole vibe to your locker room.
Yeah, and you know, the big thing, like, I can just feel it happening. If Bakhtiari gets cut by the Packers, man, you know Aaron's going to force the Jets' hand again.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how the Jets are. I love it. I think it's hilarious that the Jets cave into Aaron Rodgers' every need. It's awesome to me. Because they're going to suck doing that. And
Yep.
that's the one team I just love to be in misery.
Well, let's get Gov back in here though. Like Gov, what do you think's the like most underrated thing about like free agency or cap casualties that like goes under the radar when it comes to fantasy football? Like, what do you do as a? Because I know you're a DFS guy, you're a best ball guy. You know, you might even dabble in dynasty. I'm not sure. So like, how do you kind of view it from that landscape opposed to just a regular fan?
I mean, usually I just like off season for me in football is a lot of like step way back and take a look at everything. So like all that is like the first domino starting to fall for a team. It's like, okay, who did they cut? Why?
It shows you what direction the teams are going.
Are they opening up money? Why are they opening up money? Are they doing that to sign a guy? Are they doing that to make a run? Are they doing that because they suck? Why are they doing that? Like, and then depending on like, it could be complete organizational change that you can tell is coming on. It's like, oh, they're totally gonna probably fire their coach here too. It's like, oh, this cutting also means the coach is gone.
The one thing I'll say about David Bakhtiari, Packers left tackle, if they cut him, they will have to deal with a $19 million dead cap. That's as of right now. That's a lot of money to lose on the table.
Yeah, but to save $21 million in cap,
that's also true, but it's still a lot to lose.
We've seen teams do worse, and for a tackle that barely plays and seems could not really be all bought in. I mean, he's missed 38 out of the last 51.
Yeah, injuries have been brutal for Bakhtiari, for sure. Could be worse, they could be the Broncos trying to cut Russell Wilson.
I don't think
that's
the one that's going to get all the fucking.
This has to be a trade, and I think I know the betting odds are Pittsburgh favor. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree
for both sides.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh,
I agree.
Maybe they're about it.
I honestly think Pittsburgh likes Kenny Pickett too much. Like, I don't know where Russ goes. I think Russ might go to Atlanta more than he might go to Pittsburgh.
Either way, Pittsburgh or Atlanta, I think both are great landing spots for Russ, who, yes, we say like he had an awful year, but he really didn't look.
It wasn't horrible. Like, I remember, yes, he had an awful year, and then through like 10 weeks, he had like the same stats as Mahomes.
Yes. He had 26 touchdowns and 8 picks this season, and he was very rushed in the pocket all year long. His offensive line was terrible.
I'll give you my honest opinion. I think he is the Antonio Brown of quarterbacks. His talent is still there, but his personality is a diaper rash to most locker rooms, coaches, players. I think the talent's there. I think when things are perfect in his system, when things are working in his mind the right way, he's happy. I think he pisses off a lot of coaches. I think he pisses off a lot of players. I think he rubs people the wrong way with his bravado. I don't think I don't think a lot of people want to deal with him.
I'm not comfortable comparing Russell Wilson to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown had an extreme mental health issue that was affecting just his overall personality on the field and off the field.
Wilson just doesn't seem likable.
And Russell Wilson is just plain unlikable, so I don't like comparing the two, and I'm not going to comment more on Antonio Brown's situation because I don't know enough about it, but yeah, Russell Wilson has been a well-known locker room problem to both teams that he's played on, the Seahawks and Broncos. And we know that Sean Payton hates him too. But yeah, who is going to trade for Russell Wilson's bloated contract is going to be the key here.
Well, my thing is, in Seattle, he had a point. Like, for a while, they just ditched him and sent him to, like, hey, figure this out. And he did he got into a lot of 11-win seasons, barely scraping into the playoffs, with basically no talent around him. His best player was Doug Baldwin after Marshawn left. And
yeah. Baldwin was no scrub either.
Yeah, not to make Doug Baldwin, I have high regard for the slot receivers and all that, but there is a limit on what you can do when Doug Baldwin's your best offensive weapon.
Yeah, I think they had Jimmy Graham too, if I'm not mistaken.
Jimmy Graham was
they
awful
had the back end of good Jimmy Graham, and they had Doug Baldwin. That was basically their passing attack.
And a Tyler Lockett that hadn't developed yet.
And a young Tyler Lockett, a raw Tyler Lockett.
And that's the problem. Maybe Evan's right. Like, if hey, we shouldn't talk about it because different body types, different situations. Like, I'm not trying to say that Antonio Brown is a one-for-one comparison for Russell, but I'm saying that emotionally, I feel like they're both toxic, or they were toxic, even though the talent was there. And eventually, that kind of gaslighting led the organizations to say, you know what, he doesn't create the same kind of flare, the same kind of flame. Doesn't ignite the engine enough to make his talent worth it anymore. I don't think anyone would argue on this podcast that he's not talented. He's way more talented than Kenny Pickett, but I do think there is something to a guy being willing to work and develop and fight through. And I think Kenny has that over Russell. I don't think Russell gives a damn anymore.
Despite the problems that Russell Wilson was causing and the team that he had to work with, which was not as good as those Seahawks teams he had, he was still playing damn good for what he had.
Yeah. So, Evan, I'm getting used to this now because we are getting more professional. We're getting more attention, like I mentioned at the top of this podcast. So you can see, you go back and listen, like and subscribe, by the way. You have a great topic about dynasty and kind of like development and fantasy. And I would love to deep dive that. I think it needs its own podcast, honestly, because you have a great kind of subtopic about that. We talked about some of Donnie's offseason discussions. Did Gov have anything he wanted to bring to the podcast to close?
The only thing I would have brought up, honestly, what's our podcast? We are a DFS podcast. I was literally building my NBA lineup all the way up to 7:00 while we were doing this. So, like, I could show you what I got, or I could just tell you, like,
yeah, go ahead.
Let's show it.
And I can explain my thought process on it. Give me 1 second.
As someone who cannot play NBA at all because I'm terrible at it and don't know what contests to go when they're not.
Play every single day. I'm crazy.
Yeah, Gov needs to. I need Gov to be an NBA coach.
Donnie, one of the best advice I can give you is build lineups like they have money on the line, but don't put money on the line until you're comfortable. Like that way, you're getting used to building a daily structure. You're getting used to building that daily skeleton, but you don't have any money on the line.
Share. Oh, well, I mean, I guess this isn't horrible. Everything's already started, but.
That way we do see ownership, though. I'll pull it up.
I'm in 2 different contests, so I'll pull up the larger field one, but these are also small field contests because I got into them late. Okay, so.
Why do we keep playing black?
Because he started today.
He's 10%
owned. All right. Just to put it in NBA, there can be wild swings in ownership when like guys are starting and they're cheap. Like today, the guy for that, Goga, $3K minimum salary, starting center for Orlando, with Banchero out, 52% owned.
The cheaper guys that you get the minutes and are definitely starting is definitely a unique NBA philosophy, but you can definitely see the correlation between this MLB lineups, like NFL. It does, like, you can see your personality in this lineup, whether we're building an NBA lineup or an NFL lineup.
I can point out, like, so I'll admit, I took shots with my Orlando guys. So I wasn't expecting Franz or Black. Outside of Goga, I wasn't expecting any of them to pull any ownership. I figured everyone would go to Goga and then play Dejounte Murray and Bogdanovich from Atlanta, and that'd be the chalk. So I faded Bogdanovich and Dejounte Murray with Trae Young out, and I played Franz and Black from Orlando. I get lower ownership, and Franz is now the number one with Banchero out, so he's going off and having a good game. Black starting, like, he doesn't have to do much. He was also almost minimum salary anyway.
I have a question about that, Gov. I may not follow the NBA anymore, but the one thing I do know about the Atlanta Hawks is that, one, they suck, and two, they're never good at defense. So with these matchups that the Magic have, how is this such low ownership with what you get against that shitty Atlanta defense?
Because the public is going to see Orlando on a back-to-back where they just played in Detroit last night, and now they're in Atlanta. They're also going to see Banchero got hurt, so their best player is not playing on this back-to-back. So they're going to think this is a slow-paced game, even with Trae Young out. Like, this is two kind of crappy teams. That being said, people are sleeping. Orlando is a very good team this year when everyone's healthy. They are a very, very good team this year, and I'm willing to take shots on guys like Franz, who just had a bad game in Detroit. He'll have a good game in Atlanta because, as you said, Atlanta sucks. They don't play defense. You can play guys against them.
Don't play defense, that's true. But I will say this about Atlanta. They do not suck. They are the definition of the most okay mid-tier. I saw a stat. It was yesterday, I think.
I saw it. I think I saw it this morning. They are 750 and 750 in their last 1,500 games. Yeah, that's great. The mid
perfectly
of mid
balanced as all things should be.
Yeah, but like to go through my lineup. So like I ate the chalk in the Orlando game, faded the other chalk for the Orlando guys against Atlanta. By going with that extra value in Black, I get Joker. It's like, when who doesn't want Jokic?
I thought it was Jokic.
It is Jokic.
It's Joker.
It's Joker, though,
Joker.
yeah.
All right. It's Don Quixote, Nicola, Joel Flamingo. It's Joker. All right. Whatever. Everyone who got that reference is awesome. But like that, yeah, that's what we got. So like I by going with that extra value from Black, I get that. Then I'm playing two other guys who I believe are chalky. They were looking to be like high-owned dudes from the Utah-San Antonio game. I'm basically eating all the chalk from that game in their rookie Taylor Hendricks, who's going to probably start at power forward, Keontae George, who's already been starting at point guard, and as I said before, why not just play Victor Wembanyama? Like, who doesn't want to play with Victor Wembanyama? I always want to play Victor Wembanyama.
Well, I know Evan doesn't really pay attention to basketball, so just to preference how good this guy is in his rookie season, he is only the second rookie ever to have at least 5 in every stat. Like 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 blocks, 5 steals.
I remember the Wemby hype before he was drafted too.
Games
the only
this
other
year.
person
What
who
was
did
the
that
other
was
stat?
Michael Jordan.
Games this year with 10 blocks. Wemby 2, NBA 0. Rest of NBA 0.
Wemby is so good. He has lived up to the hype.
He is a legit, as a rookie, he is legit playing solid defense.
Yeah, I feel like Wemby is like the perfect example. If you meet him in person, he looks like a physical tree with like his arms are actual branches, and it's like how do you deal with such a perfectly built NBA basketball player like him?
Dribble and shoot it from like damn near half court.
Oh, that's even worse. Because how do you defend that? Do you?
You have to watch Wemby highlights. You just have to.
Let's say. So, and then the last guy, but before we go on, like the last guy in the lineup, some people may have heard in the podcast while I was building. I had a last guy in of Russell Westbrook, Jordan Clarkson, or Trey Mann from Charlotte. And I went with Trey Mann. I could still switch that to Jordan Clarkson if I wanted. But I think Utah is going to do their youth movement. So I don't know how much Jordan Clarkson plays when they're going to use their young guys.
Yeah, I forget we're getting close to that part of the season where people just stop playing the old guys.
Well, the shit teams stop playing their old guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm worried about Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson and guys like that on Utah. I think, like...
Well, I think Lauri's going to play no matter what just because of how good he is, so you want to keep his value up.
Yes, I agree.
We even saw recently on Twitter, I saw that Jordan Poole might potentially be moved to the bench as
Jordan
well.
Poole was already benched.
Yeah.
But like,
they might have to move him back because Koulibaly hurt his pelvis in the game. And
I was going to say, they want to give Koulibaly some more run, but they also wasn't just benching. I'm saying that there's a difference, and I was just going to mention this to Evan. There's a difference between starting a game but still getting minutes, and then like getting benched and not being part of the rotation. And that's the thing about basketball you got to really pay attention to, because there's a lot more unicorns in basketball, and like the position viability is a lot different. Like people will play multiple positions.
Like Clay now just runs with the second unit instead of starting.
Well, I just mean like
Clay will actually still start occasionally.
Sometimes, yeah, but most of the time now they're going to put him with the second unit. He might not close out games, but he's their scorer with that second group.
But no, I'm talking about from a roster standpoint. Like it's basically like basketball. You have more like flex positions because they allow you to play them at like small forward or shooting guard or point guard and shooting guard. Where NFL, it's like you only have one quarterback. You know, there's obviously the flex position, but it's a lot more restricted in that way. And then I would say like the reason you pay up for like a Jokic or a Joker character opposed to like Lamar Jackson, because they're both explosive and unique unicorns in their own sport, is Lamar Jackson to have 200 yards passing and 200 yards rushing is a lot. It's a lot more. It's like rare. It's very difficult, right? But when you talk about these high elite NBA players, there's only so few of them basically that can get triple doubles, and because NBA offers so many like bonuses in terms of triple doubles and double doubles, I think it's so much more valuable to build a stars and scrubs kind of approach. Am I wrong with that, Grove?
I mean, it definitely, the way NBA goes, because you always can get that extreme value. Yeah, I'm always thinking stars and scrubs. Like my first look in the morning is always a mid-range lineup. Bunch of 7K guys, bunch of 6K guys that just fit the lineup. By the end of the day, I've got a Taylor Hendricks and an Anthony Black that are and a Goga Batate that are going to start. So now I can just jam in Joker and Wemby and Franz or whoever else I want.
But I actually think the balanced lineups actually work better in NBA than they would in NFL too, as well. Because like I think this is interesting because Evan hasn't really built NBA or doesn't really care about it from a entertainment product. It's like in the NFL, you're worried about stacking so much that like, you know, if you have Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have probably a Travis Kelce or something like that. But with NBA, you can just play good value across the board and stick in the middle range as long as they get minutes.
Well, I'm totally willing more in NBA. It's like I already know I have chalk. I already know half this lineup is going to be like, I will not be surprised when I flip the cards over after 9 o'clock and half this lineup is 40+% owned guys. Like maybe not 52 like Goga. Although I could see someone like Hendricks being like 60+% owned because he's 3,700. So
And I
he's
was
a
just
really
going to
good
say, I
value.
don't think the ownership matters as much in NBA because of the double.
But like, I think Wemby will still be like 25% owned. I still think Keontae George will be 25-30% owned or more. So like, I think like I'm willing to just eat all that value that is projected, and I'll take a couple of shots on Orlando having a really good second game, on Trey Mann of Charlotte being the guy at 5K that just does good against Portland. Portland is also awful. So I'll take anyone in Charlotte against Portland.
You tell me if I'm wrong, Gov, but when's the last time you remember Joker really snowflaking?
I remember Joker snowflaking a couple times this year because
All I feel is fire, so I don't care.
Well, that's the thing I was just going to say. I think in NFL or like some of these more marquee sports, we see a lot less flames, but we see a lot more like the expectations a lot higher. And I think it's because like Patrick Mahomes, for him to really have a flame emoji every slate, he has to do something remarkable. The way they give out bonuses and the way people get minutes in the NBA, I think you almost have to have more than one star in a lineup. Would you agree with that?
You should. Like, you need to have at least one or two guys who are the dude for their team that night. And usually it's the same dudes for every team. Like, you know who are like, unless you're a weird ass team like Boston that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and it could be
we know
Porzingis
what we're
or
doing.
Jaylen
We
Brown
just have a
or
lot of talent.
Tatum or White or Holiday. It could be
Don't be
any
jealous.
one of them, but it'll
Don't be
never be the
jealous.
right one on the right night.
Yeah, don't be jealous.
Fair. Now, I think we subscribed to enough pain to Evan having to listen to enough basketball content for this podcast. I do really want to hear that dynasty take because you've kind of previewed it with me in the Discord enough that I want to open the next podcast we do with that kind of dynasty deep dive because I do think it's a great conversation to have. I appreciate Gov's opinion because, like I say, honestly, I think Gov's one of the better roster construction kind of difference makers we have in this industry. Like, he might not be a big name yet or ever will be, but I'm telling you, listen to how Gov builds lineups. They're very smart. And I just think we all bring something unique to the table that even in the offseason, you never know where we could go. And I think that also brings a unique kind of fun element. Like, I didn't think we'd be talking about NBA, and that was a really good segment. So stick with us. We'll continue to do these shows once a week for sure, maybe twice a week. Once the USFL starts, who knows? We might make so much profit that this just becomes so much fun. There's guys signing today that I'm paying attention to, and I'm like, I was supposed to take more time off football, but every day I look and I'm like, you know what? This guy got a shot in the NFL, and now he's getting the shot in the USFL, and I'm excited about it. I gotta get the name right though, because I still call it the XFL sometimes. I still call it the USFL. It's what, the UFL now?
UFL, United Football League.
Man, I don't know. For some reason, the extra letter.
UFL versus NFL.
I love it for the comeback story. Like maybe I'm just the underdog of life, so it appeals to me. But I love that. Like, you get a second chance. You're an older veteran. You still got some gas in the tank. I love that kind of stuff. So we will be bringing that to you at the end of March. But for now, we're going to march on and get out of here. Good night, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.
Peace out, everyone. I will be streaming